Hello, babes. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new, welcome. So before I discuss what we will be talking about today, this video is going to be podcast style. There will be some clips maybe. However, my videos from about 2 years ago or even a year ago discussing Gilmore Girls received copyright strikes, so I will not be including much clips. So I wanted to talk about the dynamics between Trix and Emily Gilmore. So let's get into it. So Trix seemed to be the only one who could rattle Emily and bring out a completely different side of her. Emily was always controlled and controlling, but whenever Trix came around, those roles would completely switch.
Grandma, this dinner's delicious.
Very good, young lady. We all believed you. Though, perhaps if Emily could have the meal served on time, Richard would have more inducement to get home at a reasonable hour.
I'm not allowed to go home. What? She's banished me from my own house. Grand?
Of course, you should respect your mother-in-law. However, what you should never tolerate is disrespect and disregard. And your spouse shouldn't allow it either, and your spouse is the one who is supposed to nip it in the bud. But Trix was Emily's karma, not only for the way she treated Lorelai, but also because she came between Richard and Penelyn's engagement. Yes, Richard is absolutely to blame, but Emily knew he was engaged and still pursued him anyway. Now let's really get into it. I always found it comical that Emily held such great disdain for Trix when they had more in common than anyone else. Two controlling women who believed that their grown adult children should act the way they wanted them to act. Their grown adult children shouldn't have a mind of their own, but instead live to please them. Perhaps it was because Trix was a mirror being held up to her. Controlling, cold, rude, a woman who inserted herself into the marriage and relationship of her grown adult son and believed what she had to say mattered more than anyone else's opinion. But unlike Emily, Trix wasn't quite as elitist in classes as she was. She felt that Lorelai working and making a way for herself made her resilient. She respected the fact that Lorelai wanted to establish herself on her own. Yes, Lorelai asked her parents for help with Rory's schooling, but she never asked for materialistic things. And before going to her parents, she would exhaust every other option available. Asking them for money was always a last resort.
I've always hated scandal. However, I've always appreciated self-sufficiency. Tell me, how do you support this child? I run an inn. Hard work? Yes, it is. Good. Hard work is good for a woman, makes her stronger. I admire people who enjoy hard work.
I also liked how she loved Lorelai and she was genuinely interested in what Lorelai had going on. And I feel as though if she was closer, her and Lorelai would have had a great relationship. She may not have liked Emily, but she did love her granddaughter as well as Rory, even though she didn't have much of a relationship with Rory.
You working? I'm working. You single? I'm single. By choice, or do you scare the men with your independence?
Actually, I scare them with my mini Pearl impression.
The lady with the hat. Well, Lorelai, I must say, on first viewing this little inn of yours looks quite impressive.
Thank you.
You're in trouble. No, you are hemorrhaging money. I see it in your eyes. It must be costing a fortune.
With Emily, however, money was always used as leverage, a way to hold things over Lorelai's head. When we first meet Trix, she is exactly what you'd expect. Generational wealth, blue blood, cold, stern, as I said before. The relationship she had with Richard never felt like a normal parent-child relationship. It felt more like friendship mixed with authority and business. I know Richard's father passed away when he was young, and I'm sure being a single mother dealing with that was a lot, especially during those times. Even with wealth, grief and responsibility are still heavy burdens. It seemed like Trix either became stern or already was stern because she believed that was what Richard needed after losing his father. But moving on to her and Emily's dynamic. Whenever Trix came around, we saw this anxious, unsure side of Emily. Emily constantly felt the need to win Trix's approval. Trix could absolutely be intimidating, and I am not a fan of hers by any means, especially with the way she treated staff. While she and Emily shared those classist, elitist tendencies, I do think Emily had more warmth to her than Trix did. I mean, this woman barely laughed unless it was at Emily's expense. Even with her asking Lorelai, is that supposed to be a joke? Lorelai says yes, and she says, good job. Very weird. Anyways, Emily seemed to hate the fact that whenever Trix came into town, the authority and control she held over Richard, and even Lorelai to a certain extent, immediately shifted back to his mother. And yes, while Richard made his own decisions, he was also a coward who allowed Emily to emotionally abuse their daughter while he stood by and enabled it. I don't understand how Emily expected Richard to stand up for her when he never truly stood up for Lorelai. What exactly are you expecting here? But one thing narcissists hate is losing control. Emily didn't like that Trix was a woman she couldn't intimidate, couldn't impress with connections, wealth, or her favorite thing to say, breeding. She hated that Trix was the only person who could make her feel small, and honestly, like I said before, I believe it was her karma for the way she treated her daughter. The parallels between Emily and Trix are almost identical, and it's part of why the phrase men marry their mothers exists. Richard married a woman who was incredibly similar to his own mother. Emily hated that Trix disregarded her, yet she did the exact same thing to Luke. She hated that Trix embarrassed her and made her feel small in front of her husband, yet she constantly did that to Lorelai. In fact, Emily criticized Lorelai's appearance so much that Lorelai ripped up every childhood photo of herself. But instead of taking accountability for the insecurity she created in her daughter, Emily brushed it off with, your mother ripped up every picture of herself because blah blah blah, when Rory wanted to know about the pictures regarding her mother as a child. Instead of acknowledging that she made her daughter self-conscious over something as ridiculous as the size of her head, she constantly overstepped boundaries, just like Trix did. Trix decided she would stay with Emily and Richard, brought in a mattress, and immediately took over the household. But Emily did the same thing with Rory at Yale, deciding Rory needed furniture and decorations without discussing it with Rory or considering the fact that she had roommates.
I have roommates, and this might make them a little uncomfortable. Uncomfortable about what? Well, this is a common room. It is common to all of us. 4 of us who live here.
The fact that Emily couldn't see that she and Trix were essentially the same person with only minor differences was always so amusing to me. Like, you have more in common than you think. Which brings me to my next point. Trix attempted to ruin Richard and Emily's wedding by begging him not to marry her.
Surrounding your breakup with Penelyn lot, but it is still my belief that she is much better suited for you than Emily.
Which was cruel and yet another example of overstepping boundaries. Now, on one hand, I can understand why Trix disliked Emily. Emily stepped into Richard and Penelyn's engagement. There was definitely overlap there, especially with Trix later mentioning how much she hated scandal. Penelyn seemed very sweet and down to earth, though we only get a brief glimpse of her. She kind of reminds me of Natasha from Sex and the City, like they have that similar vibe. I'm sure she was heartbroken and she likely had some form of bond with Trix as well. Trix probably witnessed that heartbreak firsthand, and because of the social circles they ran in, I wouldn't be surprised if there was backlash and gossip surrounding Richard breaking off an engagement for another woman. Trix herself may have even been ostracized or excluded from certain circles for a while because of it. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if it had been an arranged or socially strategic marriage given the era, which would have made the situation even worse because it was an arranged marriage and things were supposed to go as planned. However, despite Emily ultimately marrying Richard, Penelyn clearly remained a sore spot for her. I do think Richard genuinely loved Penelyn at one point, and because of the way he and Emily got together, it left Emily deeply insecure whenever Penelyn came around. Richard continuing to have lunches with her for 40 years proves there was still a bond there. Maybe not romantic, but definitely meaningful. So when Emily found the letter revealing that Trix wanted Richard to leave her on their wedding day, she was enraged, and rightfully so. But do you know what makes that storyline so ironic? After experiencing that level of hurt, Emily went on to do the exact same thing to her own daughter. She went to Christopher to break Lorelai and Luke up because she saw how deeply in love Lorelai was with him. Like, are you kidding me?
He owns a diner. He's a divorcee. He's uneducated. He's not a proper stepfather for Rory, and he's completely unsuitable for Lorelai.
To the point where Lorelai was literally looking at dresses and putting it up to her and imagining a future with him. But instead of being happy for her daughter, Emily decided to sabotage that happiness because it wasn't with a man from wealth or, yet again, their breeding. She didn't care about Lorelai's happiness. She cared about image.
Oh, Lorelai, don't you think you'll ever want to be married? Well, actually, I do. Well, that's nice.
Meanwhile, they gave endless grace to Christopher, a man who abandoned his child and only seemed interested in Rory when he wanted access to Lorelai. The moment things weren't going well between him and Lorelai, Rory became an afterthought. Lorelai and Rory themselves both acknowledged how unreliable he was. He constantly promised Rory he would show up for her and repeatedly failed to do so. Yet, this was the man Emily believed was right for her daughter. Claiming Luke wasn't good enough for Lorelai or the right stepfather for Rory is absurd when Luke constantly showed up for Rory. Long before he and Lorelai were even together, he stepped into a fatherly role naturally and genuinely cared for both of them.
Where the hell were you when she got the chicken pox but only eat mashed potatoes for a week? Or where were you when she graduated high school or started college? Who the hell moved her mattress into her dorm and out of her dorm and back in?
Meanwhile, Christopher, despite his breeding and wealth, acted like a selfish vagabond who only cared when it was convenient for him. And I hate that breeding comment every single time. It's genuinely so disgusting to me for so many reasons, which is a video for another day. Emily treated Luke like he was some bum trying to mooch off Lorelai when he owned his own business, owned properties, and even gave Lorelai $30,000 for the inn. And honestly, I don't care if Emily knew about the money or not. The point is, Luke loved Lorelai and Rory genuinely, while Christopher was valued simply because he came for money. So the fact that Emily hated Trix so deeply always felt like she hated a part of herself. But because Emily was so wrapped up in her own perspective, she convinced herself that she was the caring, concerned mother, while Trix was the evil mother-in-law. Was Trix perfect? Absolutely not. Was she an overstepping, cold woman? Yes. But Emily was not much different. Even when Lorelai tried to explain to Emily how her words hurt her growing up when she would make certain comments, essentially opening up and trying to connect with her and telling her how to deal with Trix, Emily still couldn't see the parallel. Trix and Emily were the exact same person in different fonts.
Oh, Emily, you're still here.
Yes, of course I'm still here. Can I get you some champagne?
Well, if you wish me to be violently ill tomorrow, absolutely.
And with that being said, this video has come to an end. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Also, make sure your notification bells are turned on so that you always know when I upload. And I will catch you guys in the next one.